Okay, so in the set here, notice that the topic of the set is radians. Okay, so we've been talking about this ever since we started using Desmos. You know, we always make sure we want to be in degrees, not radians. Okay, well, next year, you're going to be using radians a lot. Okay, so before we talk about the set, I'm just going to show you right now how to go from degrees to radians. Okay, because that's pretty much what you're going to have to do for a lot of this task. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so degrees to radians. Alright, so let's say that, there's example 30 degrees. Say we want to make 30 degrees into radians. Okay, so to go from degrees to radians, this is what you do. To go from degrees to radians, you multiply by pi over 180. Okay, so if we want to make 30 degrees into radians, 30 times pi over 180. Now, if we think about like top times top, bottom times bottom, okay, this would be 30 pi over 180. But then we'd have to reduce the 30 and the 180. Alright, so right now, let's just see if we can cross cancel. Okay, so we're trying to think of what goes into 30, what goes into 180. Basically, we're simplifying before we multiply. Okay, so 30 actually goes into both of those. Okay, 30 goes into itself once, and if you did 180 divided by 30, you would get 6. So 30 pi over 180, what that simplifies to is 1 pi over 6. Okay, and so what we would say here is that, remember we were talking about 30 degrees, so 30 degrees is pi over 6 radians. Okay? So pi over 6 is a radian measure. Alright, now the next thing we're going to get into here is like, remember if you think about on Desmos, every time you were in radians, your answer was a decimal. Okay, so the second part, the whole thing with radians, the first thing is multiply by pi over 180. So remember, from degrees to radians, we want to multiply by pi over 180. That's the first main point of radians. Okay, to go from degrees to radians, you multiply by pi over 180. Alright, the next important part of this is that pi radians is equal to 180 degrees. Okay, so that's just kind of like another thing, like another random fact that is going to end up coming up. Okay, but it's two things to remember. Okay, degrees to radians, multiply by pi over 180, and then also remember that 180 degrees is the same as pi radians. Okay, so like if you want a decimal, 180 degrees is about 3.14 radians.